Most of the costs will be served in 2025. But we do have a couple of changes. Jeanette recently acted. Who is our treasurer 2024 has resigned. It should. And thank you very much for being treasurer. Thank you. And Mike Connor, in orange dress colored sweater there. No, his wife Katie, somewhere. Mike's looking at you like, why don't this maybe not going to our treasurer for 2025. Thank you, Katie. Thank you. Katie's not feeling good enough, so she's not here. We have three directors' positions, and one of them came up. That was held by Peggy Colgate. Raise your hand, Peggy. Thank you, Peggy. And Mike Connor, and the sweater, the rose colored sweater, is been nominated to take Peggy's place as a director. And the board, as it stands now, that we'll vote on is president. Oh, before I do this, I should take any nominations from the floor for any of the positions: president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, and well, and those would be our appointees here. So, if you would like to be president,
He can test and raise them up.
there's not. There's not. Yes.
I move that the entire slate be approved.
Okay. So, Rick has moved. There's no nominations from the board. Nobody wants to be president. Rick has made a motion to approve the slate of executive board for PAHS. All in favor? Aye. Okay. What's that?
Can't vote on silence. Something's wrong with the days. Well, I said I.
Oh. Okay, so the board is in place for 2025. Thank you to Jeanette and Peggy for serving in 2024. And anyway, we'll move on. We'll get to our presentations. Mike Connor is going to do a presentation for us. And then after that, we have Sylvia, who is where? Oh, right here. She's going to do a presentation. So Mike, I'll have it give it for you.
Ready?
Oh, it's already gone. Carrying on the coach still. There have this step. Something wrong with the not scared. So all can be wrapped up. What a saying.
Makes me feel. Can I put something else in this setup? Well, what I'm looking for, at least for here, we had a remote.
Okay, so which one was your presentation?
The Green River.
Yeah. Sometimes you want to George Ford, make you start. Why would we? I can get squared away. We're gonna draw.
It's like just walk there and point the hanger.
Well, then nobody at home can see.
I know.
But there's only like three there.
That's why I
So
would like to use the present. Oh, wait a minute, here it is. Got
Talking at first. Well, we've got these really, compliments that Sylvia and John, Sylvia Andrews and John Noble.
Of course, somebody.
And
Really
then, and we'll draw. This wall are drawing.
who's that? Just to comfort and call good.
Well,
And of course, that's it. Great pointer down there, and you start pointing, it starts going.
Okay.
follow you. Ready? Hi. Okay. All right.
Hit the lights a little bit. So we got everything will work. Um, so I'm going to talk about actually two trips we took last year. This is not one of them, but I just wanted to point out that Katie and I are semi-avid canoeists. We have been in the past. We used to live in Springfield, Missouri, and within 2 hours, there were 3 or 4 national wild and scenic rivers we could go to for day trips or for 3 or 4 days camping out on the river. So we're used to things like that. This is probably the North Fork in the Ozarks. Fishing along the 11 Point River. It's a good trout stream. Also, we've been up together and separately, at least for me, to the Boundary Waters, Southern Ontario and Minnesota, doing lake canoeing up there and some other rivers and lakes in the North Woods of Wisconsin and Minnesota. So after we moved here in now close to 6 years ago, I was thinking about doing a Western river somehow. And at some point last year, Google served me up a picture of a place called Labyrinth Canyon on the Green River. So I looked into that and decided, yeah, let's try to do it. And Katie actually agreed as long as we did a outfitted trip where we didn't have to do all the work ourselves. For those of you who, many of you may be familiar with the Green, but it's a pretty major river, the major tributary of the Colorado. In fact, the Colorado below where they join together here probably really should be the Green River, but Colorado politicians convinced the USGS back in the early 1900s to call it the Colorado River. So it's quite lengthy, going from Wyoming Wind River Range down to where it meets the Colorado near Moab in eastern Utah. And there's a number of couple of outfitters that do trips on the Green. The area we're looking at is this stretch here, about 40 miles from Ruby Ranch down to Mineral Bottom, right above Canyonlands National Park area. And then below that is called Stillwater Canyon, although some people call Labyrinth all the way down. The Green River throughout its length has a lot of places where there's big white water, and there's a lot of places where it's not. Labyrinth Canyon is known for being very flat water, very low gradient, unfortunately. And so there's no white water, but lots of really nice scenery a good way to see canyon country up close. So we went in with a company called Navtech that goes in at Ruby Ranch, which is a private ranch, and they don't allow too many people anymore. There's other companies that start up at Green River, the town of Green River, and go for 5 days. Our trip was for 4 days, 3 nights, 4 days, through Labyrinth Canyon, starting at Ruby Ranch down to Mineral Bottom, which is pretty much, there's some of it's private land, the ranches, but most of it's BLM land now. One resource I found that was really neat, if you may have heard of Ann Zwinger before. She's apparently a Colorado writer, does a lot of nature writing and stuff. And she has this book, Run River Run, that at various times she's done the entire length of the Green River from the headwaters down to the Colorado. And it's a very nice book on the natural history and the history of the Green. So here's us starting out. This is our guide, Chance. These trips, they're not canoe trips, although I've seen on the web people that do their own trips. A lot of them use canoes, but most of the outfitters all use rafts with the guide in the raft, and then the people like us can either ride in the raft or inflatable kayaks like this, or a sea kayak, which is really the best vessel to use out here, because those inflatable kayaks, as soon as the wind comes up, are really terrible. And we, in fact, ended up riding in the raft a lot. We knew we could do that if we wanted to take it easy. Here's Katie behind Chance on the last day we were there. Other times when we were in the raft, however, we were paddling because the wind was so bad that we needed the extra help to rowing to get down. That's the problem with having such a low gradient and low current, that any wind that comes upstream at you is going to be really brutal. And of the 4 days we were out, 2 of the afternoons, we had to do a lot of work to keep moving. But it is a beautiful place. Once you get a little past Ruby Ranch, you start getting into the actual canyon like this. Lots of interesting rock formations. I like taking pictures of weird rocks. I thought this kind of looked like the Maltese falcon over here, right up here. So, just a lot of relaxing and watching the cliffs go by and different kinds of formations that are out there. It's pretty cool. Maybe Larry can tell us what any of this stuff is at some point.
Well, those are spires that are just weathered out because they're a little bit harder than these.
Yeah. This was our second campsite on just a sandbar. Ideally the water should have been about a foot or 2 higher, would have been a lot nicer. And depending on the water level, some campsites you can get to easily. Some require higher water. Some are easier to get to at low water. But this was a nice afternoon at our second campsite on the sandbar, and it is located near a feature I didn't point out before. It's called Bonot Bend. It's an incredibly huge oxbow on the Labyrinth Canyon. We're camped in that picture right on this side of this cut here, and then it's another 7 miles around Bonot Bend to get over on this side of it. And people do climb up here. There's an area here that's fairly accessible where the rock has fallen down, and people will climb up there, and there's a register up there you can sign to show that you've been up there, and then either go back or come down on this side, and hopefully someone's bringing your boat around Bonot Bend. But it took us from breakfast to a late lunch about 2:00 right in here to get around Bonot Bend, especially with the way the wind was coming up. We didn't see much in the way of Native American stuff. Apparently there's a fair amount of Fremont culture stuff in the side canyons, a little bit in the main river canyon, but they're more into the side canyons. Chance, who's our guide, who knew a fair amount about archaeology and had worked on sites, he thought this might actually be a granary that was about halfway up this cliff face. But we didn't, most of the rock art, Native American rock art, is in the side canyons, but there is a lot of historic rock art. This is Register Rock, where there's just hundreds of people have left traces in the last 150 years or so. Some really neat looking things like that. And this bison head. We did see one historic one. This is a fairly well-known. There's a couple of these on the green by a guy named Dennis Julian, who was worked with Choteau and Roubidoux from St. Louis, and came out to Colorado and Utah. And in the spring of 1836, he left 2 or 3 inscriptions on rock faces along the green. They think he might have been actually sailing upstream because at this one there's a little bit of a boat and some other weird little figure here. And then later in March, this is May, I think, 3rd, and then later on in May, there's another one about 5 or 6 miles up the Green River. So he was definitely going upstream and may have been had some sort of boat to sail in, although I have no idea where he would have put it in because from the lower, see, we did about 40 miles, and there's another 40 miles to the confluence of the Colorado. And if you do that lower 40 miles below Mineral Bottom, the only way to get out of the river once you get to the Colorado is to go through Cataract Canyon, which is one of the major whitewater sections, or have somebody pick you up in a power boat and take you up somewhere. So where he would have put this boat in, I don't know, unless he came in, he could have come in, I guess, at Mineral Bottom if there was a trail down there at that point. And this was our last campsite, one of the beautiful spot below the cliff there, our tent. And then sunset looking back upstream, and then sunrise the next morning. Chance down there setting up the kitchen to cook us breakfast before we finished up. And then here's our group. We weren't sure if we were going to be with a large group, but apparently, even though they supposedly run this trip once a week, they have dates you could leave on. No one had booked the trip with our group, Navtac Corporation, for over a year. But 2 days before we were going to go out and they were going to send us out with just Chance and Katie and I, a woman, Joyce from Colorado Springs, called them and said, hey, I want to go out on it. So we had 3 of us and our guide there. So we're kind of dirty and ready for a good shower and a good meal after 4 days on the river. But first you have to get up. I don't know if I can do this on here. Let me see. This is a video on the PowerPoint, but the way they've got this PowerPoint set up, I'm not sure I can play it. Anyway, the next slide will give you a little bit. Well, there we go. This is from up at Canyonlands National Park, one of the main places you can drive there, and that's looking down into where we were on the Green River. Well, it's probably Stillwater Canyon. It's low down below where we were, but it's 1,000, 1,500 feet to get from the river up to Moab from down there. So it was a pretty hairy ride coming out of there. We also went to Arches and Canyonlands a little bit, just driving tours at that point. And then the other thing we did last year, I'd forgotten about, was last February, we decided we wanted to go someplace warm and wet. So we went down to the Yucatan for 5 days at a town called Tulum, below Cancun, right in here. And we had found this nice hotel that was kind of walled off from all of the tourists that were out there. In February, it was just wall-to-wall people and dance beats almost 24 hours a day. But this was a nice secluded place that had its own cenote, its own sinkhole that they built the hotel around. And there's Katie swimming out in the sinkhole. And in the afternoons, they have parties out there. But then in the evening, it's very quiet because most of the people that stay in this place go out to the discos and the bars and everything at night. We were one of the few people that actually ate dinner in the restaurant and had all of this to ourselves for the most part. And then there's a couple of Mayan sites nearby. We went to this Moyil. And then there's one in Tulum itself as well. And we took a tour group that went out to this Mayan site. It's considered, I was looking it up today, it's considered a moderately sized site that functioned in trade, people coming off the Caribbean from other areas. Tulum and this Mayul were big in trading centers for stuff coming through the Caribbean. Fairly large multi-step pyramid there, not a, nothing like you'd see at Chichen Itza or whatever, but interesting place. This one I think is called the Temple of the Heron because it had this fresco of a carving of a heron in front of the temple, and got to see people actually working on it and talk to the archaeologist there that was in charge of it a little bit. So it was a nice little way to see a little bit of Mayan stuff, but we didn't have time to go up to any of the big sites. And the beach, which was right across the road from the hotel, although you couldn't see it because of all the beach clubs and hotels and everything that blocked the view. But once you got out there, it was really kind of nice water. Oh, that got weird. Again, I can't play this, but as I said, we were kind of adopted by some of the staff because we were one of the few older couples there, and we stayed at the hotel. And we had a little party with them the last night we were there. We were dancing out on the patio in front of the cenote, and this is one of the kitchen guys who's Mayan, and he's demonstrating this Mayan fish call where he's trying to call. I'm not sure what kind of fish that is that finally showed up over here, but if I could play this, but I don't think I can, so it doesn't show up right on this. So anyway, that was what we did last year. Certainly had a good time at both. I'll let you figure it out. I have a question. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know you had video. I would have figured it out.
It's too plus.
This is for the painting by Bob.
Top player.
John, who's from there? Okay.
No, wait, 9, 4, 3, 2, 0.
Okay, it looks like Sylvia's about ready.
Try this.
Okay, sure. Yeah, it's right.
All right.
Just click on
Just click on it and wait. There we go. You good?
Yeah.
Any videos?
Well, no videos. Okay, guys, this is, last year I talked about the Mimbres pottery. Last year I talked about the Mimbres pottery and I mentioned this Ancient Southwest Kiln Conference, but I hadn't been to it, so that's why I decided to do this again this year, because I actually got to go to it in September. And it was a huge, amazing, exciting and dramatic to watch the firing of a whole lot of pottery and huge outdoor kilns, fires, a big crowd of people. So around 90 people enjoyed the beautiful Crow Canyon campus in Cortez. And they were there to learn about the amazing pottery traditions of several of these ancient traditions like Mimbre, Cibola, Tusayan, Salado, and Pueblo. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, so they called it Hot Times in Cortez, an ancient fire rekindled. And this was because the first the group that ever wanted to study this topic was there in Cortez. And so they were going to try to rekindle a fire and learn more about these ancient cultures, and especially about where the kilns are found. So what the people that attend this, and I couldn't believe there were 90 people, but not, and they are called replica potters because they use traditional clays and they use traditional construction like coiling and scraping, just like the ancient people did. And then they, of course, fire in open pit kilns or surface kilns. Yeah, so the first speaker, what was a 2.5-day conference. So the first speaker was Paul Armaggiati, and he talked about how in 1991, a small group of potters and archaeologists got together at Crow Canyon to try to answer some questions about how the ancients created their distinctive black on white pottery, which is really like the Mimbres and the Acoma pottery, which is so amazing because it's so intricate. So now in 2024, 33 years later, they're still sharing their discoveries and expanding our understanding. So the actual first official kiln conference was in 2003 at Leop, Arizona. This conference offers glimpses of the entire process from collecting raw clay to forming pots and, of course, firing. Everybody's welcome at the conference, and it's actually free and open to the public. And all kinds of people, all ages attend it. And if you want to bring a couple of pots that you made yourself in the traditional manner, then they'll fire them for you for just a mere $20. So the next speaker there, you can see him up in the corner, is Andy Ward. He's really famous, the major guru of ancient pottery. He talked about techniques such as smothering to stop reoxidation of iron, protect from weather changes, and prevent cooling too fast, which would cause breakage, and also to keep the blacks black and the whites white. So it's like reduction firing. If you're a potter and you're firing in a kiln, it would be called reduction. His classes, he has lots and lots of online classes that you can sign up for. And they include like where you find the clay, which is really a pretty big secret, and how to coil a pot, how to fire without a kiln, and lots and lots more. And he also has live classes in places around the Southwest, including where he lives in Southeast Arizona. So if anybody's interested, he's got a Mogollon pottery workshop. Focusing on making ancient Mogollon pottery, like corrugated pottery, which was some of the earliest pottery. And then another one in the first weekend in May, where they're going to go on to the Mogollon Rim in Arizona to collect the clay and fire out of doors. Okay, so since he has this huge internet presence, and in fact, people like in Australia and Europe take his classes. So I'll go on to the next, because if you want to find out more about him, he's pretty easy to find. So this next person was speaker was Sherilyn Carver, and she was introduced as a dogged researcher. which she really was. And since 2011, she's been a replicator and a scientist reviewing literature and searching for wild kilns on different sites. She has concluded that there were a huge amount of kilns that we can't see because they've been, quote, put to bed or smothered, or else they were just surface kilns. But there's a lot more of them out there than anybody realizes, even archaeologists. And then another issue she discussed was whether the potters made the pots where they found the clay, or whether they took the clay back to their villages. And so she was saying, oh, well, she talked about the location of the kilns and the water sources, and she said if there was no water available, she used her own urine, and if there was no paint, she used her own blood. So that's why they called her a dogged researcher, because she really, really wanted to be authentic. So if you'd like to see her whole presentation, it's Through a Replicator's Eyes, Kilns and Firing, Sherilyn Cover, 2024 Southwest Kiln Conference. Then Andy and she got into a little bit of an argument over whether you should, well, first of all, they build the fire under the pots, and then they put the pots on stones, and then they build another fire over that, and they put pieces of broken pottery over the pots so that to protect them. And some people think that you shouldn't do that, and some people think you should. So there are different strokes for different folks, even with the people that are the experts. So then in the afternoon, there were all these people demonstrating these techniques, and you could watch them paint with yucca brushes and use vegetable and mineral paints. Here's somebody painting with a yucca brush. And another technique, which is pretty popular, is to use a brush that has a couple children's hairs and then just drag it across the surface to make those real fine lines.
Why children's hair?
Well, because they're so fine, they're so fine. And the lines are so fine. So yeah, this is, I get pretty geeky about this because I really, really enjoy it. But this book is fantastic for discussing the aesthetics of ancient potters. It was done by Edwin Wade and Alan Cook. So the paints they use are either mineral paints or vegetable paints. And a popular vegetable paint is made by, well, it's black, of course, and it's made by boiling bee weed for a long time until it becomes very dark and thick. And then they put it into little dry cakes and wrap it in a corn husk so it's ready to use, and it's called guaco. Another aesthetic that's important is the vessel surface finish. So often they take great care in stone polishing a pot's exterior. So they try to minutely compact the surface of the clay, and then it brings the moisture out so that it gets kind of a clay float on it. And this gives a luminosity to the pot.
This is after you fired.
No, before you fire it. Yeah. While it's still wet. Some of the other hallmarks of mastery. For fine arts pieces, the thinness of the vessel's wall is highly admired. So some of Nampayo, who was a Tiwa famous potter, her pottery is just 1/4 of an inch thick, and it's almost like porcelain. And then, like the sculptural quality is important, the shape of the pot. And then compositions are important, like negative patterns, negative layouts, negative backgrounds, and then, of course, very complicated designs. And then density and pureness of color is highly regarded. And finally, the actual firing is considered in evaluating the pottery. And of course, the quality of individuality is crucial if you are looking for a really, a masterpiece pot. and the reputation of the artist, but the trouble with many modern potters is that they copy the older pots and they lack individual inspiration and the creative compulsion of the artist, as well as the cultural meaning of the original. Of course, that doesn't go for replicators, because replicators are studying the process, and imitation is the best form of flattery, really. So they're not really trying to be artists. But this book is like it's like $200, but you can get it Rawlings Library. Yeah. So let's see. Then we got into, the next day we got into actually firing. They'd already cut this by juniper wood, and they're placing it under, into the pit. This is a pit fire. Yeah. Then they're lighting the fire. There aren't any kiln setters here, like the computer on your kiln, but people just had to stand and watch the fires. And it was very hot. So since there were 90 people, we had to stand behind these ropes. We couldn't get close to the fire and get burned, but it was still pretty exciting, pretty dramatic. And then this is what it looks like when they came out. A lot of them didn't make it, as you can see, but really about half of them did. So if you were lucky, you got a good pot.
Wow.
And then they stacked them all up on the table, and these were a lot of happy potters who had their pots, a whole pot to take home. Some people made not only pots, but little sculptures like this guy with the horns. Then at night, we had a kitchen dinner, which was really amazing because there was 90 people bringing stuff. And we had a trade blanket. We had this music, and we had a trade blanket where people could bring an item to trade and then describe it and hope that somebody would bid on it. And money was not allowed. Only trading. And some of the unusual things traded were homemade applesauce and all kinds of art and art supplies. So that was our group picture. And at the last day on Sunday, we discussed the firing. We had our group photo and wished each other bon voyage. Since there were so many people, we it was just a great learning experience. It was a great experience, and it was great to meet like 90 different people that were interested in this hobby. So my two pots are on the back table, the two of them. Yes, yeah, the ones that came out, and then there's some membranous ones from last year, and also a youth pot. That's all.
Question. Yeah, did you meet a person at this conference by the name of Shirlene Kager? I'm sorry. Yeah, she's from South Fort Oregon.
Oh, she is? Well,
Yeah, she has a ranch south of Fort Oregon.
yeah.
In fact, you can find her website, CLC Studio, online, and she's one of those that makes the pot right in the.
That's what I was saying,
There's a
yeah.
picture of her in there with the pot in her legs, and she's with
Yeah.
straw down the bottom. She's actually making the pot.
She was the one that, yeah, she uses
here's
what's
that.
ever there to
Right.
make the pot. She was a very interesting speaker, and her talk.
Yeah, there it is. Christians. See, look.
Yeah. Good questions? Yeah.
In your post-firing discussions, you showed that there were some that looked like they broke apart. What are some of the primary reasons for the breakage? Is it the water content, or how close you get to some of the larger embers that are in there, or what?
Yeah, all those and all of those things, and sometimes other pots will fall against the water, coals will fall on them, and they're too hot and they crack, or there's lots of reasons.
Sorry, firing by something issue. You said you don't have a pyrometer. Yes, of the color, the color of the fire.
No, you can't see you can't see the pots that are under the, wood and the pieces of pottery, broken pottery, and then there's another fire on top of them. So you can't see it. They just, it's just from experience of knowing how long the fire and depending on the clay and wood. Yeah, so that's why, I mean, it's not, that's why so many chop out, but, I mean, at least half of them do it. The more, of course, Andy, he can really do a fire in he's on years in charge for next year's website, you can find out what this is everywhere, all Southwest, like it's been in Utah and Arizona.
So I didn't do so. So, yeah.
It's sure.
No, tree. John, me?
Materials don't even lie. Anyways, things are, it's got all kinds of goodies in it. And
then there's snacks, tablecloth, and a paper.
to work up a little,
Oh, I need it in your phone.
yeah.
It's my first one, it's the next one.
Yeah, CLC Street. She owns a ranch, or she, her mom, or school.
Last three digit insurance, three,
Five. Speech of what's been years ago. She was here.
six months ago. 395.
Which means some. My shot. Stay it down now.
335.
Nobody's drawing money, nobody's going once, going twice.
Next, and so.
Somebody's gonna.
No name again. 308.
Yeah, yeah.
Most of them. So, as you know, we had this fine artifact that we said archaeology deaths, and you can pass it around and look at it, and that sort of thing. And we had a number of guesses, and I was supposed to select what I thought was the most intriguing, but there were a lot of intriguing responses. And so I failed and people voted. So thank you for voting.
Did you consider sending a picture of it to the antique roadshow?
So I actually consulted some people. So this came to, it's in my possession right now because it was donated to the Alice Hamilton Scholarship